So let me stuff on YouTube.
I think it's working.
Okay, guys, can you hear me? If you could
Let
let
me
us
go
know.
public.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. So if you could let us know if you can hear us well, just starting live on Facebook and on YouTube. You could let us know in the comments if you can hear as well and everything works well. And yeah, if you could let us know where are you watching from, and if you could share this video as well, that would be amazing. It's going to help us to get more people watching. And the topic is overcoming personal challenges in stressful times. So we're just going to wait a couple of seconds so more people can start watching. And yeah, if you could just quickly let us know in the comments if you can hear everything properly. And
All right.
cool, I can see.
Saskatchewan. Hello, Terrence, and hello, Tracy Robertson.
Okay, San Diego, where are you guys based currently? Cool.
I'm here in Nashville.
I'm in Eastern Europe. Freezing Eastern Europe. All right. So, again, for those of you who are joining a little bit late, I'm here with Ben Joseph Stewart. Check out benjosephstewart.com. He's a filmmaker, musician, and TV host. So, he created documentaries such as Kymatica, Esoteric Agenda. If you have subscription to Gaia.com, you can watch his shows, Psychedelica, Limitless, and he also has a YouTube channel called Waking Infinity News. And Kymatica is one of my all-time favorite documentaries. And Ben released that like 12 years ago for free online. I watched it like 5 times or 10 times, and I've been recommending it to everyone since it came out. So Ben is a great researcher. He's been around for a very long time, 15 years at least. Some of your first productions were when, in 2007?
2008 was when Esoteric Agenda came out. I was making music with the same kind of message for at least 6 years before that.
Yeah. So we've been around for a while. I've been around for also quite a long time. Truth Theory started around 2010, and we keep going. So
you built quite a thing for you, man. It's impressive what you built with Truth Theory. So congrats on that.
Yeah, no, thanks. The thing is now with censorship and shadow bans and everything going on, the reach has been just going down like crazy everywhere. So that's why we are asking people to follow us on different platforms, because basically, Facebook is hiding stuff quite a lot.
No.
So we started Telegram channel, and link is in the description. So it's always good to spread to different platforms. Once they hide you in one place, maybe somewhere else you can share your content. So first thing, remaining calm in the current madness. And let me just start by saying that I think the times are tough, but also it's important to remain calm, because if you watch news or you read news on Facebook, it seems like the world is falling apart every day. And I think sometimes it might be actually more harmful just to read those news all the time and watch the news, it's all like, spikes every day, new strains. It's just fear all the time. And really, like, it doesn't do anything good. If you constantly gonna just live in fear, it doesn't help with anything, So, like, I would start with just saying that, we're here for a reason. This comes because of whatever. Like, this is what we came here to do, and won't be comfortable, but to remain calm and not fall into the trap of fear. What do you think, Ben, about it?
Yeah, you're definitely right. I would never be so bold as to admonish all mainstream media. I think that's too um it's not nuanced enough. But what I will say is that I've met so many people that believe um that they know how to watch news without it let's say triggering or programming their subconscious mind. And in a lot of ways, when I begin to just kind of dissect how it doesn't even do it in the ways that we think it does. We think brainwashing is planting specific, content inside of us, when really it's more or less, if you think about it, the same reason why everyone wants like coffee every single morning. It's a kind of a stimulant. Well, the thing about news is it's kind of a stimulant to our amygdala, and it causes us to feel kind of like a spike in clarity. It causes us to get that subtle adrenaline boost to our body, and that in and of itself becomes addictive. But then the fact that it's a daily routine, so it is introduced at very specific times in most people's circadian rhythms, their sleep and wake cycles. And when it's introduced at that same spot every single day, and it has a very specific kind of message for you, and it's almost exactly the same length all the time, and then it has the same colors and flashiness going on at the same exact time, and it has the same kind of soundtrack, and it's the same kind of content about what's going on in the world, then you really have to ask yourself, what is the nature of the content? What is the archetype of the content? Not how specific can you get, but how general of a category can you place it in? Is something going wrong or something going good? Is something going wrong for only half the population, but it's not going well for the other half of the population? And for the most part, there's always some huge, obvious thorn in the side of every mainstream media message. So what I would say is, a lot of the times you're definitely right. We like to know what's going on in the world. We like to be well informed. So therefore, like, if there is an immediate threat or some kind of threat coming, we want to be able to have enough information to act accordingly. But we are fooled most of the times into thinking that the media is informing us of a real look at what's happening in the world. When I believe, and many other people have backed this up, it's to induce an emotional state of being. And in that emotional state of being, whatever the nuanced legislation or however the mainstream media wishes for us to behave, go out and buy more food, buy this stock, sell this stock, stay in your home, wear a mask when you go outside, any and all of these hoops we wish to jump through. If we're in the state of emotional arousal that is achieved by simply watching the same thing at the same time every single day, introduced into our cycle, then what happens is we become more compliant subconsciously, and the conscious mind won't pick up on it because we still like the same music, we still choose the clothes that we wear, we make all these little decisions that we call freedom, and we're unaware of the unconscious decision making that we have that's been completely hijacked, or at least partially hijacked. So in that respect, that's a long way of saying I definitely feel like we watch too much TV and we consume way too much content without understanding how that content can program our subconscious mind. However, I'm not telling people not to engage in content. Obviously, I love putting out content online, but it's the nature of it trying to wake you up to something as much as an internal potential, or is it telling you, stop focusing on how much potential you have, look at these threats in the world that you need to face? If that's the nature of the news, then you really have to start asking yourself a question: am I watching news that programs me with disempowering beliefs, or programs me with empowering beliefs? Because we're all being programmed, even our friends, they program us, they give us lingo, they give us,
Yeah.
so you're definitely right. To stay calm, for the most part, news is not so good on our nervous system. Most news is not so good on our nervous system.
Yeah. I heard about this theory that actually the reason why most news is negative is because apparently we are wired, through evolution to look for threats. So basically, you pay more attention if there is a warning sign or whatever. So you are more likely to click, and then that's how they make money on ads and stuff like that. I don't know if this is entirely true, but definitely if you look at the news, there's always like this fear factor. If you look at, it's not 50-50. It's not like they don't tell you, oh, this amazing thing happened today in this place. It's it's always like, what's wrong, what's going on, like it's like 90% of stuff is negative. So I think it's worth, it's important to keep that in mind, that to not get affected by it, because I see a lot of people, they get angry and frustrated, and really, you cannot really change these things too much. So I think it's good to keep that in mind. Yeah, you have also anything to add?
Totally. I mean, I read this book called The Human Brand, and it's basically about how branding works on the archaic psyche, meaning going all the way back to our ancestors, who would be in tribes of no more than 20 to 30. We'd be walking through dense vegetation, likely, and come across strangers. And if you come across a stranger, a program kicks on instantly, and it literally takes a fraction of a second before we make a discernment, because we had to act quick in those situations. So if we take the whole evolutionary narrative as, what's been happening for hundreds of thousands of years, a million years of our evolution to bring us to now, if that's that hardwired into who and what we are, then branding is built on a similar methodology, which is you give a logo, you give a color scheme, you give certain textures, and you give like some kind of presentation, which causes us to instantly go into this program. And I'll explain the program. There's two things that we have to make a snap judgment on when we see a new stranger, or if we see even a brand. The same thing starts to happen inside us. Does this new entity mean me well or mean me harm? And we need to figure that out very quick. And then the second one is, how efficient, or what is the capacity of that entity to get what it wants? So if it means me well, then, how effective is that product going to be at helping me? How, or if it means me not well, like somebody that we meet in a dark alley, or our ancestors met, in the jungle, does this individual mean me harm? And then if it's a yes, then it's straight to, what's the capacity of this individual to do me harm? Because if it's, if it's a tribe of more people, or if it's, an angry woolly mammoth, or if it's angry, mouse, right? Like, that's the capacity thing. Like, how much damage could this thing cause me, or how much good can this thing cause me? And, what is its intention? So for the most part, everything that we see, all content that we see, especially new things, we go through this archaic protocol. We're calling upon ancestral ways of perceiving reality. So, to me, I kind of believe, I think that what we do as a species too much is we don't dig into the mythical or the archetypal inside us. We stay very much in the intellect, which is dealing with facts and figures. And have you heard the latest about, this country and the squabbles between, the left and the right? That's all the details of like, where is the argument at now? And the archetypal is why are we having the argument to begin with? How do we take a zoomed out approach to take a look at what is all this news? What's the nature of the news? Not what's the content, but what's the context.
Yeah.
And once we take that zoom out approach, I feel like that's when we start empowering ourselves, because that has to be done as an internal process of critical thinking. And I feel that that's something that we're missing a lot, is critical thinking these days. We are in a position where we're asking for our content to be digested for us before it arrives at us. Like, I don't have time to read the newspaper. I'm driving to work. Can you just find me a 5-minute podcast that'll tell me everything that's going on in the world? And if I find one that I like the format of, and the voice doesn't annoy me, then I'll listen to that every single day at the same time. So, this is the kind of programming that seems to happen. And I feel like what would empower us so much more is news that really engages our critical thinking faculties.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, even in alternative media, if you look at most of alternative independent media, there's so much pointing fingers on who is wrong, and you don't see a lot of solutions. This is like always, again, like 5-10% max, and this is really disempowering, I think. And for those of you who joined a little bit late, we're talking about overcoming personal challenges in stressful times. If you can share this live with your friends, that would be amazing. And actually, a week ago, we did different live with Ben, and we hope to keep it every week. And last week, we were talking about this book called Fourth Churning, which basically was written in 1997 and kind of predicts the future, technically. It talks about how we're going through a period of disruptions, and what we are observing currently, it's literally predicted in the book. So I think if you haven't watched the live before, it's still available on Facebook. This is the live from last week, and I think this book is really important because I personally believe that what we're seeing now with COVID, it's just really the beginning of something bigger, maybe. And it's good to be informed and think about, maybe how can we prepare ourselves if, anything more serious is going to be happening. It's not really to scare anyone or anything like that. It's more to be informed and think about, solutions and think ahead. What do you think, Ben?
That book is it's pretty incredible. It was written in it was published in 97, and it talks a lot about the exactly kind of what we're going through right now in this country, but also around the world. And I won't rehash how deeply we went into it last time, but what's interesting about that is I had a lot of people that I turned on to that book tell me it seems kind of scary because certain catchwords stuck out to them in that book, and that was in crisis periods, which we are in the middle of. Historically, we are like smack dab in the height or the peak of a crisis period. And historically, it has always ended in war. And in the book, yes, that word stuck out to me. This is, the power of words. We hear that and we start going into these just different modes in our head of what could that mean for me? How do I pray? What, how do I prepare? What if it is correct? And for me, I also kind of feel that the way they talk about history is not this like meandering out into infinity where there's no rhyme or reason. It seems to repeat itself. And it keeps coming back around, which means that historically, like we are born into a very interesting time. You and I were born during what's called an unraveling, and we've only ever known an unraveling moving into a crisis period. Because after a crisis, there's always this high. And after a high, there's always an awakening that turns into an unraveling, and that eventually goes back to the crisis period. So, I mean, I guess the point of all this is the solution. Here's my whole platform. Everything, I love talking about what's going on in the world. But I think my whole platform really rests around we are artists, all of us. And being an artist, whether we acknowledge it or not, that's part of our artistry. Is we haven't gotten to the point where we realize that this is our co-creation as well. And as we are making decisions thinking that it's just hopeless, why even try? The outside world is dictating my life, not the other way around. And we get so caught up into that narrative that we feel like, well, look at what's happening in the world. Hey, I stay informed. I watch the news every single day, and there's no way we can face what's going on in the world, with where we're headed with the World Economic Forum and the Fourth Industrial Revolution, this thing called the Great Reset. There's a lot of people that they really disempower themselves, saying, Ben, you're just not being realistic if you're optimistic. And I say to them, when did you get so bold as to think that you know what reality is? Because I'm not just going to rely on ancient quotes like a wise man knows himself to be a fool. But I can personally say that most people that I have met after going through a thought process with them have come to find out that they don't have a solid grasp on physics. They don't have a solid grasp on quantum physics. They barely have a grasp on foreign policy and things that are happening like right now in the world, but they barely understand the bedrock of reality. If I say like, are you just into science? I can go science with you. I can talk about history with you. I can talk about biology, chemistry, what happens in a fight or flight situation inside, internally, psychologically. And for the most part, what I find is that with this thought experiment, there's so many people that they psych themselves out with the same creative ability that they could be using towards psyching themselves up. And so they look at the world and they see nothing but problems. And I say, yes, but have you ever been to a climbing gym? Where there's, these little things on the wall that you climb up. It's like rock climbing. They call those problems. Where they bolt them into the wall, if it's trickier to navigate, they call that a problem. Hey, go on that problem. Don't go on that problem. You're a beginner. That's your problem over there. And a coach would never be like, you're going to lose, like this is too difficult of a problem for you. They wouldn't psych you out. They would psych you up. And what that means is we as an artist choose whether we engage optimistically with the challenges or just say, well, I choose to believe that it is hopeless. Therefore, I'm going to resign and hope that somebody else does something about this. And that's the exact crisis. And almost that's the epidemic that I would say we have, is so many people, before they even ever get to the point where they are about to express and at seeing what their highest potential or higher potential is, they sabotage themselves and they don't even step onto the dance floor and even give it a shot.
Yeah.
This is the one thing that needs to change. And it's the easiest thing to change because it is the one thing that is well within our power, is to just make the decision. I'm going to try. I'm going to engage. I'm going to give it all I've got. And then I'm going to bring in my community around, those who will support me if I fall, if I fail. They'll remind me it's not about winning or losing. It's about trying and developing yourself, because wins and losses, they come and go like the in-breath and the out-breath. But what you learn sticks around forever. So that's what I think we need to be engaging with more, is what do we have decision power in? What do we have agency over ourselves? And let's not pretend we know reality so well that our potential, that we just prove to ourselves and we convince ourselves that our power is not parallel or even greater than the perception of the obstacle out there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with most of what you said. So, like, first thing, as you said, most people have no idea about reality. They think they might understand something, but when you really start spending time, like you and me, we spent 15 years trying to research some of these subjects, and experimentally as well, through, like, these ancient practices and psychedelics and rituals and other things. The reality that's like, the rabbit hole goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And I thought that I knew something like 10 years ago about reality, and now, after going deeper and deeper and deeper, like every year I'm just blown away with understanding new things, and everything that I thought was true, now it's completely different. And if you look at history, for example, let's say, there was this Hungarian doctor who discovered that bacteria was basically, I think that there was this story with um, you know children being born, and if doctors were taking care of them because they didn't wash their hands, the mortality rate was higher. And he noticed some pattern, so he thought maybe there are some of these microorganisms that are causing the illnesses and things like that. And I think until someone discovered microscope, that was just mumbo jumbo, and actually, from what I remember, he was ridiculed throughout his life, and for his theory. And now it's obvious, we know that we have microorganisms that we cannot see, but with specific tools we can see them. And maybe there is the same on a bigger scale. So we might have different dimensions, different entities interacting with us that we might not be able to see, because at this stage maybe we didn't develop tools yet to understand them. Like, scientists tell us that we see very, very, very tiny fraction of reality, something like, I don't know, 1% or 2%. Like the visible light spectrum, everything outside of it is actually the full reality. So we literally are like blind people, trying to understand reality, being completely blind, with no senses. So, and if you listen to history, all these stories of mystics and people who had these religious or spiritual experiences throughout the centuries, they all say that there is a lot more going on. And, it's accessible to only some people, maybe at some times. It's not something that can be easily replicated. So I think there's so much more to reality, and then, what is currently understood in society. And another interesting thing is there are a lot of these prophecies talking about the end times or shift into new reality. And they replicate in different cultures. Like, for example, obviously the Mayans, but Hopi, for example, they also had a prophecy stone, which basically describes like two different timelines. One is humanity continues, and the other, it's like some disaster. So I think, personally, I believe that this is what's happening in the next couple of years. We're gonna have one version or the other. One, possibly it's gonna be some kind of Armageddon, maybe technological enslavement. We're gonna become cyborgs. Corporations gonna have impact, influence us, or maybe we're gonna go towards sustainable path. Because even if you don't believe in any prophecies, if you look at how fast things are moving, we're definitely going to see insane changes over the next few years. And it's up to us where we're going to end up. Are we going to end up in some kind of become slaves with microchips, or have communities and save the planet, and keep living in harmony with nature?
Mm.
What do you think?
Yeah, so I read a lot about technology and where it's headed, especially in the next couple of years. And there's this thing I kind of feel where you were mentioning like microbes and macrobes and these things on different scales of size, and maybe don't even operate in the same level of physics as we do, but they have a lot of influence over us. Like, something as minute to a macrobial intelligence as flicking a flea off its shoulder would be a solar system destroying event in this level of reality. And so, but then it doesn't even have to be like that. Like a microbe will be opportunist. Like we know that there's microbes everywhere. And so there's something about microbes also being like little machinery, and they enter patterns in and they replicate patterns inside. So if you get a little bit on your hand and you put that in your mouth, that's the perfect like breeding ground. It's warm, it's wet, it'll allow it to proliferate if it has the opportunity and if it serves it. A lot of the time certain bacteria, they don't thrive in certain environments, so it wouldn't become an opportunist. And then that extremely small thing could happen and we wouldn't see it because it's too small for us. And then so I kind of feel that like the biggest power that we have is also by, I think it's really by keeping very clear on what is good and what is unknown to us right now. Like technology is an overarching category. And I think you're right. I think it could split off in both directions. One could lead to us being in a transhuman future. I see that super clearly, and it's not like this thing that's like, I bet you in 50 years, or I bet you even in 20 years, we're going to have people with chips in their heads and chips in their eyes and heads up displays that we don't even see. And they can read our facial expression and know almost exactly what we're thinking, can tell what our heart rate or blood pressure is, can tell if we're nervous, can tell if we're lying, all that kind of stuff. The technology is actually already here. It really is. I mean, I could go through some technology that would blow most people's minds. And what I would say is that I also believe that, I use the term that God is not the internet, right? Like when we say God is everything, and we act as if, God is everything, it's everywhere, or the divine is everywhere, or our higher spiritual connection with the all is everywhere. But then our subconscious will be going like, yeah, but not the internet, right? Not 5G, not all these other things. And in a way, we have to at least step back from some of our, fears and prejudgments about the external world and how it arrives at us. So we can say that like the divine is not the technology, but what if it's the thing that is to get us to wake up to the fact that, whoa, this is what we're building. We're building a transhuman future. I don't think so. Like, I don't want that. Why do I need that technology in my head? We haven't even figured out the full potential of this living, wet, biological machinery, this thing that's a marvel, to creation. We haven't even figured out a fraction of its potential. And we're already going to start sticking technology that's man-made, very fallible. I can go through a laundry list of problems with it. We're going to stick that in our heads and in our eyes. There's that. And then there's also well, how can technology be priority number 2 or 3, right? And come along for the ride instead of us being along for its ascent to power. And to me, I think that where we're headed with technology, the bottleneck for us to actually do something about it as a species is look at what the news is talking about and look at what they're not talking about. The amount of technology that is literally out there right now that the media is not talking about, to me, is near 100% proof that there is something huge being kept from the masses. And the only reason that a parent would keep information from a child, or let's say a boss would keep information from an employee, or somebody on one team would keep something from the other team, is because it either is an advantage to themselves to keep it secret, or we literally are not ready to even hear what's out there. But I doubt it. I've learned what technology is out there, and my head hasn't exploded. So the fact that there are eye drops called Chlorin CE6 that but the biohacking community's already caught on to this. You can drop this in your eyes, and for 2 hours you'll have night vision, and you can see up to 160 feet in the dark. That with CRISPR-Cas technology, and I'm forgetting the guy's name who figured out you can inject E. coli and program them with an image, a moving image, like a GIF, like a woman riding a horse. And that image will proliferate inside you, inside the E. coli, to where you start getting the actual visual, that technology actually exists. Inducing that, how? Getting microbes into the air. All you got to do is maybe shake somebody's hand, and eventually they may be having visuals because of that, but specific visions, implanted memories that aren't like, just technological. And I could go on and on and on with new technology, like the Forrest Gump gene, it allows you to run forever without getting fatigued. Like most people, the bottleneck is we can't even conceive of the technology that's out there. Therefore, we don't believe it. And so we don't get engaged with the actual solutions that are available to us because we're not even getting the right information.
Yeah, no, a lot of people think in linear terms, so when people maybe 30, 40 years ago, they thought in 2020 we're going to have flying cars when we don't have flying cars now. So, they might think, this is still like 100 years away, whatever. But once you go beyond some thresholds, like with general AI and things like that, things just going to start shifting just faster than ever. Even if you look at how social media just came like 10, 15 years ago, how much it's influenced our lives, even cryptocurrencies and blockchain. I remember speaking to some people a couple of years ago asking about cryptocurrencies, and they were like, what is that? Some gambling, So basically, these things, once, because they keep accelerating, every system that is created allows for other systems to be created faster. So, like the infrastructure is there already, cloud, for example, using cloud system, everything where you can start a company and have access to all the tools, just paying some subscription here and there, which wasn't possible 20 years ago. If you wanted to pay for a server, you had to pay like loads of money for it. So all these different things allow it to grow faster and faster and faster. And I see that the problem is always like when we go beyond with something like too far, we become slaves of it. It takes us over. It's like with sugar, for example, like I mentioned that I think at some point before that, in the past when you had like that fruit thousands of years ago, or a little bit of honey, that was this massive treat for you. And because we desire sugar so much, we created all these products that now make us fat. And we have such easy access to them that if we cannot control ourselves, they take over and they control us. It's like that with a lot of things, with sex, pornography, so easy to access. You can
Yeah.
get things that are way beyond what you normally get. So it becomes addicted, and now it takes over. And with technology, it's going to be the same. It's first it's just tools like computers and mobile phones, but they're already working on things that you're going to implant in your bodies. And
Yeah.
it's really dangerous because these corporations aren't very trustworthy. We learned that over and over and over, and this kind of power can be so easily abused by whoever gonna take over. So it's super important to like be careful, not go towards this direction, because you know yeah.
It's Kelvin Lord in the chat just said balance in everything, and it's really true. I mean, you know, um, so this is what happens during a fourth turning, during a crisis period, is there's an acceleration. It always happens that way.
Mm.
And this is accelerating really quick because the tools of acceleration keep advancing. So, but if you look back, as soon as we had coal and steam power, things accelerated. As soon as the printing press was out there, getting ideas out there was accelerated. Now we have social media, so getting ideas out there has accelerated. And there's this guy Tim Pool. I was just on this podcast, and he just recently said, like, 10, 15 years ago, before social media, everyone would watch the same shows, right? And if the Grammys would come on, or the Emmys, and they would come on, and all of a sudden 20, 50, like sometimes 60 million people would be watching the same thing at the same time. Millions and millions more people would be watching the same news, the same 15 shows, right?
Yeah.
Now there's so many YouTubers, there's so many podcasts, there's so many fractionalized and tribal siloed opinions that are even somewhat the same, and so what happens is, what Tim Pool believes is this is kind of the unraveling of American culture. And it's not just our culture, it's culture in general. This is finally a global event where it's not isolated just in certain pockets. And this is what seems to happen a lot. And there's an acceleration in these times. When it comes to technology, I kind of feel that there's an inherent balance in it, because even those who are the 1%, even those who have domination over the algorithms and they dominate the production, and mind you, Clone Wars, like Star Wars Clone Wars, where they make thousands upon thousands upon thousands of robots, right? We're in the robotics era as well. Soon, AI will be able to run a factory because it'll have all the info of what a CEO would do, what a business manager would do. It could do all of it at the same time. And it will be able to just mass produce robots to do what? Well, robots are getting more sophisticated in subtle, nuanced ways, in speed, in power, in just might and strength. And now imagine you can mass produce 100,000 of them in 2 months, because you can work like 1,000 workers nonstop, no breaks, no naps. You don't even need to turn on the lights for robots. They don't need light to see. You don't need to feed them. They don't even need oxygen, right? So you just lock them in a basement. It'll keep producing and producing and producing, and it'll ding you on your phone if there's a problem that it can't handle. So we're at a position now where we really need to start seeing that. Where I was going with that was the people who own the algorithms, the people who own the factories in Magic and in alchemy and in self-actualization, there's this common phrase, and it's be careful what you wish for, because you may get what you want and not realize that it comes with all this baggage that you didn't even see. You weren't aware that to get this, you have to get this. You have to. It's part of the same coin. So you got to get the reverse side of it. And so I kind of feel that at the same time as a lot of people are freaking out that we are being hired to code our own virtual prison and our own cultural brainwashing system, which is social media. So we are being paid to build our own prison, right? And to build our own brainwashing machine. In that, what is the flip side of that? In a sense, I believe that the ultimate flip side of that coin is it could be used, if it's just slightly augmented by the masses, to awaken each other, to completely and then COVID would become the thing that wakes us up. Everyone's saying, oh, it's a pandemic, it's terrible, people are dying. And what comes out of it that maybe we wouldn't see? Millions, if not billions, of people waking up to the fact that the system may not have their best interests in mind, whether by design, whether by ulterior motives and conspiracy, or complete ineptitude and ignorance. That we wake up to realize, oh, you know what? I can't wait for somebody else to come in and solve this problem. We need to self-actualize together as a community and just take it over, because you guys have historically not done a good enough job. How do we hijack that timeline? That's the question as an artist I keep asking people, is what do we do to hijack that timeline and start moving in that direction? Because we don't have the time nor the capacity to deal with both. So we need to get rid of what disempowers us and stop doing it all together and move only towards what empowers us. No matter whether other people want to be disempowered and say you're crazy and self-police and say we don't have the potential, it's too big, you don't know what you're doing, you're ignorant, don't listen to that. If it's disempowering, just don't listen to it, because wouldn't you rather be wrong in an empowered, unconditional love kind of direction, or disempowered in a fearful, I'm just going to sit here and rot and wait for somebody else to come and save me? Wouldn't you rather be erring on the ignorant side of unconditional love rather than the seemingly informed side of self-loathing and self-diminishing? To me, I would.
Yeah, no, totally. I think, the future is really to think for yourself, become more autonomous. Because, if you allow others to run your life and you trust in authority, and if you look at history, trusting in authority never works. They always, the reason why they want to be on the top is because they want to control, have influence and power. So they always use these clever techniques to, brainwash people, to make you believe in whatever they are selling you, whatever their agenda is. So it's time really to start thinking for yourself, doing your own research. Just recently, I'm not sure about, don't want to talk about vaccines, but there's this AstraZeneca, right? Vaccine. And everyone was like, yeah, trust science, safe vaccine. Now I see some headlines talking about some blood clots. I didn't look into it properly, but it's like first they tell you one thing, that everything is fine, and suddenly they are withdrawing it from some countries already a couple of weeks later. So this is exactly that. They're gonna be always like, this is the truth, this is science, and if something goes wrong, no liability.
Limited liability. Thank you, insurance companies. Yeah. I will just say, anyone who, and I'm going to say this as responsibly as possible. If you're not at least a little bit apprehensive, or just want to take pause and ponder the situation, If any drug makes it to market, no matter how it's administered, by a shot, by a pill, by anything, under something called Operation Warp Speed, it hasn't been tested. And it hasn't been tested enough, I'll say. And I'm not going to be among the first to try anything that is experimental, put inside of my body or my family's body under a mission called Operation Warp Speed. And so we shouldn't be surprised. We shouldn't be surprised. And I am so surprised that more media is not saying, well, before we tell you about the pharmaceuticals, the vaccines, the masks, the social distancing, the stay-at-home orders, that if you're traveling, you need to quarantine for 2 weeks, all that stuff. Before we tell you about that, let us tell you what over a long period of time we've learned about boosting your immune system. So no matter what you come down with, your body has enough virility to fight it off and to stay healthy. Let's talk about diet. Let's talk about enough hydration. Let's talk about not sitting for too long and moving and sweating and being around community. Let's talk about the foundation and the fundamentals of health. And then, okay, if you want to, then there's all these other things, like take these supplements, try these pharmaceuticals, these vaccines, these other kinds of interventions. I would be fine with it if they at least covered the basics of what the history of even allopathic medicine has come to find out about what's the foundation of health. Before we start talking about interventions like, oh, we can't handle whatever's going around. We can't handle it. Just assume you can't handle it. So assume that you need this thing that's going through something called Operation Warp Speed. I find that hilarious.
Actually, something I wanted to mention about preventing disease and boosting your immunity naturally. Just before this session, I was doing my Wim Hof breathing session, and Ben, he's doing his sessions, and my mom, who is in her 60s, she's doing Wim Hof every day. So the thing is, it's such a simple method. I would say it's one of the really easiest things you can do to boost your immunity naturally. And I've been doing it for 10 months every day. And you can literally spend like 10 minutes a day doing it. Anyone can do it. Anyone, if you are like old, disabled, most people can really do it. So I noticed whenever I would have any symptoms, flu-like symptoms or anything like that, if I do a session, it's gone. I'm not saying it's going to work for everyone the same way, but it's definitely something worth doing. And to me, like, that should be the thing promoted, in the media. Like, instead of all the fear mongering, like on a national TV, they should do like a daily session, breathing sessions, because really it's super simple. So if you are new to this stuff, like, just search for Wim Hof method on internet and on YouTube. There are these videos where basically you can do guided session up to 10 minutes long. And I do it every day. I just turn on YouTube, look for Wim Hof session on YouTube, and keep doing it. And it's growing, and it's amazing, and it's simple, powerful. You don't have to spend 1 hour at the gym. You just do a couple of minutes, and anyone can do it. So I would say this is a massively important thing to keep healthy.
Yeah, I do Wim Hof just about every day, and there's different methods. Like I love shouting out to Wim Hof because I've interviewed him 3 times now, and he's just a phenomenal human being. He walks the walk, not just talks the talk. And he's in it for really empowering people. There's other people like Stig Severinsen there, who has kind of, it's breathology.com or .org. He has more like math breath. Like it's 4 seconds in, 2 second hold, 8 seconds out, 2 second hold. And then it's just, you repeat that over and over again. And then there's obviously holotropic and rebirthing. There's 0 point breath. There's Butaiko breath. There's hatha. There's all the yogic different types of breath with pranayama. And all of them, it's funny. It's like taking designer drugs in a sense, because they all augment consciousness slightly differently. But if you get over the kind of like fascination of altering your consciousness and, I feel high. And I believe that what that feeling of high is we are experiencing the flood of neurochemistry that is a correlation to an awakening or an expansion of consciousness and the perception of novelty. We're seeing something new, but because nothing is ever really new, we already know all. A certain aspect of us knows all. It's a remembering. So novelty is not just something brand new. It's a remembering of something that we have forgotten. And there's that aha moment, and it's seen with gamma. And so I know you just posted it not too long ago. DMT Quest is in the chat. The link to DMT Quest, watch that documentary, because the breath, like Wim Hof breathing, causes for the same kind of change in your brainwave patterns as does DMT, which we know is already in the brain. But how do you access it? How do you cause it to increase its amount? And why would you want to do that? And the reason I believe that psychedelics can be extremely healthy for you is because it's not the thing in and of itself, because you can get addicted to a thing. It's what the thing brings to you. And that is a moment of breaking out of our rigid habituation, our thinking patterns, when we think of something, or when it's a certain time of day, we start craving something. That's habituation. And psychedelics breaks us out of that habituation so we can feel like we're witnessing reality without needing the stimulation or the antidepressants or the psychedelics or the relaxants or whatever it might be. We don't need all of that, and we can still perceive reality. And that is healthy. That's healthy. That's why Wim Hof breathing is healthy for you. And that's why certain types of health will be very acute. You get sick, you get a cough, you get a fever. Other things are chronic and long-term. You have back pain and it won't go away. You have depression and it changes your posture over time and it decreases your organ function. All of this is health, and community is another huge part of that. So I think we've named a bunch of ingredients, like your breath, and consciously taking over your breath for a period of time is healthy. Changing your diet is healthy because it causes, and staying aware, that's the missing ingredient. If you bring awareness to stopping eating or eating more or drinking more water. Even some people have found that they started drinking more alcohol, but bringing awareness to it to bring them to the point where they realize, wow, alcohol is really not good for me, right? But they had to drink more while bringing awareness to it before they realized it. And this is kind of what I mean. If we are not bringing more awareness to our activities and our behaviors, we're not allowing for a healthy response to whatever we're doing. And it's turning subconscious, and it's turning into a pattern that eventually will be habitual and drain us of our energy. So, I mean, all that being said, I would love it if more media was out there saying, before we talk of bigger interventions, have you done meditation? That is proven across the board to be good for your health. Have you done contemplative exercises? Do you do breathing exercises? Do you move in healthy ways? Do you get out into nature? Do you get enough sunlight? Are you getting enough magnesium and B vitamins? All these things, most of the times we pass it off and we think we know it. It's like, yeah, you need to get that. Yeah, but are you doing it? You know it, but are you doing it? When was the last time you've had enough magnesium in your body? And people will be like, well, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, right? Then we're like, you're not at your optimal health. And that means that you're not even accessing the inner artist that you are. Because if you're sick, your body is focused on healing it and recovering from the onslaught of toxicity. So of course you're not being that expanded state artist that you could be in. So this is why I said we need to get our house in order before we can start bringing magic into the world.
Yeah, no, totally. I think it's always the most important is to work on yourself, and it takes effort. And a lot of people, like for example, if I've been telling so many of my friends to start meditating, and I've been meditating for 13 years roughly, so you know I've been going pretty deep. But what I notice is always people are like, because it's something new, they don't know how to do it, maybe, or, it's just like they're going to try one time and it's like, it doesn't work, whatever. I couldn't focus or something like that. Because it's like every new habit, you got to spend some time. You got to spend 3 weeks, trying. And initially, maybe it's not comfortable because everything new you want to learn, it just can be challenging for the first few days. But once you go through, the couple of days, it becomes easier and easier and easier. Sorry.
It
So,
does.
I think it's one of the things that we need to find time to learn.
And find your community that I just did a really good interview with Charles Eisenstein, and he said, that there's ingredients like a psychedelic would be like an intervention from nature, and it can open you up to something new. And then there's also practice. So once you've done a psychedelic, it's not about being high. It's not about being in a psychedelic state. It's about taking the lessons from that space back to where you need it most, back into the mundane world. And if you can't do that, you're not practicing enough. And that's what you just said about like meditation. Most people, they'll just stop after a while. They'll stop trying because it didn't work immediately. And I'm teaching my daughter guitar, and I'm like, it takes a while, baby. It really takes a while. You need to keep at it. And eventually you'll arrive at a moment where you realize you're playing a part of a song and you can sing to it. And that'll be so exciting that that's enough nourishment to get you to the next step. And the third ingredient that Charles Eisenstein mentioned, aside from external interventions and practice, is community. Because without community, we can be doing a good job, but like my daughter would put down the guitar and be like, I'm done. And I'd be like, no, baby doll, you actually did a really, really good job. Can I just show you one more thing, please? Right. And she'll be like, okay, she's reluctant, but I show her something else, and that just plants a seed. And still 5 minutes later, she puts the guitar down, but it planted the seed. So next time, even before it's time to practice, I hear her up in her room practicing that one thing that I just showed her. And I'm like, yes, planting the seed is all you need to do. And so a lot of the times we think that the solution needs to be huge and grandiose, but it doesn't. We need a little bit of help from the outside, a lot of practice, and a little bit of support. And if we have that, we have everything we need. We have all the ingredients we need for our own inner solution. And that is the key ingredient for how to ripple that solution out into the outside world. Because if we don't have that in order, then what we ripple out into the outside world will be defeated, half-baked, incomplete, and filled with our self-doubt. So that's my
Yeah.
rant on solutions.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, through lockdowns now, so many people suddenly had to become isolated. So many people, suddenly had to start working from home. And a lot of people are going crazy because of lack of that, community, lack of that identity that they built, that is part of a bigger community, that you deal with people on a day-to-day basis and you have interactions. And for me, for example, I work from home, so a lot of the time I'm gonna be on my own, but I don't have a problem with that. But I noticed how so many people who were used to interact with people constantly, suddenly if they're isolated, like they start having mental health issues, stress, anxiety, etc. So it just shows how important it is. And also, another thing is, let's say you are going through some kind of awakening, you're starting to understand deeper picture. And and what happens is that you basically need support from other people. You need to, because it can be so challenging that, um, you know if you're waking up to new realizations, and no one understands you, and it's so important, so powerful, such a shift in your life, then you need to find people who resonate, who can listen to you, understand you, and maybe sometimes it's almost like time to find new community, because you are evolving. Maybe it's time for new evolved community as well. But yeah, we're gonna wrap up. We're like beyond 1 hour, and next week we're gonna try to do it exactly at the same time. So that's 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 7 p.m. GMT. And yeah, check out Waking Infinity News on YouTube and benjosephstewart.com, and have a look at the links on Facebook. We posted a bunch of links to Ben's documentaries, and check out the previous lives as well on Facebook page. If you look through the videos, you can see some of our previous conversations. And yeah, next week, see you again. And thanks for joining me, Ben.
Yeah, man, it's been great. And just to give a shout out, Kelvin Lord, thank you for all the great comments. Same with Terrence Porter. Really appreciate the support. And yeah, keep joining us every Wednesday.
Yeah, no, thanks, guys.